Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Steph and today I am doing a experiment, a challenge, a reading challenge. So basically I always see videos in any community on YouTube where it's like Instagram controls my day or Twitter controls my day, and they do a whole video where they have like polls where people have to pick the thing that they're going to do that day, whether it's what they wear or what they drink or what they eat or where they go. I've seen it in the book community. I've seen a few people do Instagram controls my reading, and I've always liked that concept, but I didn't really want to do that because I don't think I would get enough people answering it like in the time frame that I need. But I also thought it would be kind of cool if I let YouTube control my reading based off my subscription box. So it's people that I follow, whether I just like their personality and their content. Some of them are my friends, and some are people that I have very similar reading taste to, and so I get a lot of recommendations from them because I think we all have a few people we follow, or maybe a bunch of people we follow that we don't necessarily read the same, but it's fun to watch their content. It's fun to watch them gush over the books that they love. For me, it's romance readers. There are a few romance readers that I follow, and there are a few of my friends who are big romance readers, and I'm not, but I love watching them gush over romance books. So the idea behind this is that every couple of days I was checking into my subscription box on YouTube and seeing who uploaded a video, and my rules to myself were the thumbnail of that video had to have 1 or 2 books in the thumbnail. And I would choose one of those books, especially if I hadn't read both of them. I would choose which one I wanted to read more. Ideally, they would just be holding up one book, and it would be a book I hadn't read. This was a lot harder than I thought it would be because most people hold up stacks of books. So there's a bunch of books to choose from, or there are stacks of books and you don't see the spines. The other problem I ran into is that a lot of them I had read already. So even when it was 2 books, it was 2 books that I read. So for the last 6-ish days, I've gone into my YouTube subscription and taken screenshots of different videos that had a thumbnail with 1 or 2 books in the thumbnail that I obviously hadn't read. And I chose 5 different screenshots, but I realized after I'd taken the screenshot and like set myself up to read a specific book, there were actually 3 books in the thumbnail. It was just kind of more behind the person's head. So I disqualified that one and I found 4 books. So I'll take you in order from the first person I took a screenshot of and picked a book from to the last. So there's 4 people on here, and basically we're gonna kind of see what they have to say about the book. And I don't think any of these have spoilers in them. I actually haven't watched the videos because I wanted to watch them for this video with you guys. We're not going to watch the whole videos. We're just going to watch like a few bits and pieces. I'll watch the full video, but I'm not going to put the full video here. So the first person that I saw who uploaded and fit my rules of 1 or 2 books in the thumbnail was Tammie from Tammie Tries to Read. I love Tammie. Tammie reads a lot of science fiction and fantasy, which I love science fiction and fantasy. So I was really excited that it was Tammie because I knew that I would actually get like a fantasy or a science fiction. And that book is The Gods of Jade and Shadow. You can see that in the thumbnail. But let's see what Tammie says about this.
I ended up really enjoying this book. I ended up giving this a 4 out of 5 stars. I don't know really what I was expecting going into this book, to be quite honest, but I don't think I got what I expected. I don't know if you can see this, but like I tab romance with pink tabs, and I have used quite a few pink tabs. I adored the romance in this. This is my favorite kind of romance. I think for me, the standout like element of this book is definitely the writing. Like the writing is just absolutely stunning. It is so lush and descriptive, and really whimsical as well. Like the entire book almost reads like a fairy tale, both in terms of like obviously there's a lot of mythology in here. It is like Mayan mythology inspired. It is just like the entire kind of magic system is rooted in Mayan mythology. But aside from that, it does read like a fairy tale, and it reads with that kind of like whimsical story vibe. The character development for Cassiopeia, like her character development is just so satisfying. Like seeing her grow, it almost reads like a little bit like a coming of age story. She is kind of, I think she's like 18 or something, but she grew up in like a very small town, in like a village, and she wants to see the world, and that's kind of what she gets the opportunity to do. And I really love her story, her journey, and her growth. I feel like the ending felt rushed, especially because the rest of the book has this kind of like slower, meandering pace.
Well, okay, so that made me really excited to read this book. I loved Mexican Gothic, so I'm really looking forward to this one, even though even Tammie says it in her video, it's supposed to have a different tone than Mexican Gothic. So I'm interested to see how different they are, but also if there are similarities that I like within Silvia Moreno Garcia's writing. So this will probably be one of the first ones that I pick up. So the second person that fit my rules was Ben from Ben Reads Books. I usually really enjoy the books that Ben suggests, so I was really excited once again because it's remote control. But let's see what Ben has to say about it.
Honestly, if you're in like a bit of a reading slump and you want to read something short, punchy, and just fantastic, I would wholeheartedly recommend you to read this book. It's funny how the novella starts because we're introduced to her after her reputation's been known a little bit. And then the story goes back in on itself, and then we get to see how she became who she was. And I really, really like that format because at first, when I first read it, I was like, okay, I can see, I couldn't see where it was going, but I really liked the way that it was being presented. I think for me, especially by jumping a little bit further into the narrative, we could talk a little bit more and build up intrigue about what's actually happened to the main character. So I really, really enjoyed that. She starts off with a huge amount of community, with lots of people knowing her, and that is taken away from her. And then she is alone, and she's walking, and she's isolated, and she's just trying to find her way to the next village. And the people who try to help her eventually learn to steer clear of her, and she becomes almost an object of fear. And that was a little bit sad. And we're just watching the journey as it continued just made me feel, I felt invested. She faces some quite interesting and hard-hitting themes of just like life and death. It made my shoulders heavy. I felt for her, genuinely did.
So I have read Binti before, and I actually own the entirety of the Binti trilogy, but I need to finish it. And then I also own, I'm looking at my bookshelf, I own Who Fears Death and the Book of Phoenix. I'm excited. I'm really excited to read this one. I think I said in my one video about anticipated releases, this was one of my most anticipated releases of 2021. So I'm excited to finally be able to pick it up because I was hoping to read it for Blackathon, and then I realized I wasn't on the sci-fi/fantasy team based on what I had been wanting to read. So thank you, Ben. Also, Ben's review just made me really, really excited to read this because it was a great review. So the next person that will be controlling my reading is Mel from Mel Reads. Mel actually had a thumbnail, as you can see here, that had 2 books in it. And of those 2 books, I had actually read one. And if you watched my last vlog, you will know that I was gifted from my friend Aaliyah, Monday's Not Coming. So again, another book that's been on my TBR for a while, and now I have a physical copy of. I'm gonna be reading that. So let's see what Mel has to say about Monday's Not Coming.
I don't think any of these have spoilers in them.
So, funny story. I didn't actually look completely at the title, and there are spoilers in it. So I slightly spoiled Monday's Not Coming for myself right now. I stopped it immediately because I was like, wait, she's talking about a plot twist. Oh well, it's no big deal. Still gonna read it because... So we can't see what Mel has to say about it. I will watch it afterwards and kind of give you a play-by-play on it because I don't want to put spoilers in this vlog. So I really need to read titles next time. That's what I just learned. And then the last person that will be controlling my reading is Bear. And I actually don't know if Bear is specifically talking about this book in their video or if they're just talking about the author of this book. But Bear is holding up this book, so it counts for the purposes of what I'm trying to do in this video.
Then we have Brandy Colbert. I read The Revolution of Birdie Randolph, I want to say the week that it came out, and I loved it. And I just know that I will love everything that Brandy Colbert writes. So everything I've heard about Brandy Colbert, I just feel like I would love, as far as her books go. Like, there's a thriller about a ballerina. That's my aesthetic. And I also know that she's not only written YA, she's written adult and, like, middle grade. So there's a wide array of age ranges that I can read from her. And then also, like, Brandy Colbert just gets the prettiest fucking covers.
So what we know, Bear loves Brandy Colbert and loved The Revolution of Birdie Randolph, so I'm really looking forward to this one. I don't actually know the first book that I'm going to be reading for this because I thought it would be Gods of Jade and Shadow, but now listening to other people talk about these books, maybe I want to switch it up. Also, now that I kind of have a spoiler for this, maybe I should just read it or take a few days and try to forget about it.
Good morning. I was laying in bed last night and I decided to look for an audiobook, and I found the audiobook of The Revolution of Birdie Randolph. Accidentally read half the book last night. Didn't actually mean to do that. Didn't think I was really going to like this book, but I think I called the major plot twist pretty early on. And while that in like a thriller or something would throw me off and make me not want to read the book, I'm actually really curious about how they're going to handle it. I'm going to try to finish it today, and then I will update you on my overall thoughts. I have kind of a busy day though, because I have a book club discussion, and then I was invited to do some sprints on Rachel's channel. Yeah, I guess I could finish it during the sprints, but normally we just play Among Us for hours, so I don't actually know if we're sprinting or not. Everybody, it's me. We finished a book.
Trying to get her to do a book review is just impossible. Did you like all of Hi, so like I said yesterday, I picked up and read like more than half of The Revolution of Birdie Randolph, and I was really loving it, even though I was correct in the plot twist that is revealed later in the book. Despite being able to call what the plot twist was, what kept me really invested was I wanted to know how they were going to handle that plot twist when Birdie found out about it. So that's where I was like, I need to keep listening to this. So I ended up finishing it during reading sprints yesterday, as well as I read 40 pages of Remote Control, and I finished a graphic novel. But basically the premise of The Revolution of Birdie Randolph is kind of like a slice of life moment, because she is in her junior year of high school. She is trying to follow this really strict path that her parents have laid out before her. Her parents are pretty successful in their careers and they really want Birdie to be successful. Her mother in particular is very strict and puts a lot of expectations on her. So Birdie kind of tries to be the perfect daughter, but also wants to live a little bit. So you're seeing this slice of life moment where an aunt comes back into her life and she's just watching how her mom is reacting to that, because her aunt and her mom don't have the closest of relationships. They kind of have a strained relationship. So she's watching that unfold, as well as she's starting to realize parts of her life that she wants a little bit of leniency on from her mom, and she's not really getting that. And she's kind of seeing this guy that she doesn't think her parents will approve of. I just really liked Birdie. It's not that I necessarily related to her on this deep spiritual level, but I related to her in the sense that, like, sometimes you just want to live your life and you feel like maybe your parents or somebody in your life is judging you for the ways that you want to live your life, and they're putting a lot of pressure on you to be a type of way, to act in specific ways that maybe aren't actually true to who you are or who you're growing into. I also really enjoyed the romance in this book. I also think it helped for me that their relationship was kind of pre-established. It was something that was already happening before you even meet this guy. I already forgot his name. Before you even meet him, they already have a thing, and she's kind of telling you how she feels about it. That it wasn't the focus of the book, so I think that's what it comes down to for me. Despite me calling the plot twist from literally the first chapter, it made me more interested to know how they were going to handle the situation. So I can totally see why Bear loves Brandy Colbert and would call her an almost favorite author. Because I could see myself reading more of Brandy Colbert's work. Also, as I said, I am like 44 pages into Remote Control, and I'm already loving it. It's hard to say a lot about it because it is a novella, and I feel like I can easily give away too much. So you're following Sankofa, and Sankofa is the adopted daughter of Death, and you kind of follow how this happened. And it's actually pretty tragic, and I wasn't expecting it, because the beginning part of the book actually tells the story of her having this reputation of being the daughter of death. And the majority of people are really fearful of her, so you get this one perspective for the first, I don't know, 15, 20 pages, and then it switches to the past, and you start to piece things together. And that's where I got really hooked, because in the beginning you're a little bit confused. You're confused about what's happening, but then once you get to the part that is about the past, everything starts to come together, and this book just became 10 times more interesting than it was. And I don't know, I just really like Sankofa as a main character. But I plan on reading this today and finishing it, and then I'll update you guys. To answer your question, no, I'm never wearing pants. I'm wearing sweatpants. And also, if you see me wearing this sweater over and over again, mind your business, because I don't leave the house. What's the point in changing my sweater? I finished Remote Control yesterday, and 4 out of 5. 4.5? I'm going back and forth. There's only one thing in this book that made me lower my rating, and it's just basically that there was a plot point that was introduced like halfway, maybe a little further than halfway in this book, and it's something that couldn't have possibly been explored enough or adequately within the novella, especially as far as we were into the novella at that point in time. And it just bothered me because it was a really interesting plot point, and I knew I wasn't going to get any answers for it, especially as we were getting closer. I really, really loved it, and I'm curious now if I go into Who Fears Death and the Book of Phoenix, if those plot points that are set up in here are further explored in those books. And that's a big reason why I don't really want to fault this novella, but I also understand that like these can be read as singular books and not part of an overall thing. So I don't know. Otherwise, I felt like this was perfection. Again, it's really hard to talk about this book because of the fact that it is a short form fiction. It's a novella. It's only like 140 pages, but if you look at the writing, it doesn't even cover a full page. So to talk about this, I have to be careful because I don't want to give any spoilers about it. Basically, what I said in the beginning kind of is just what it is. It's a journey of Sankofa's life and how she came to be the adopted daughter of death and how that is manifested in her life and like some of the tragedies that have happened in her life that she kind of has to work through. So it's really interesting to see her relationship with technology and with people and with herself and how that relationship with herself has developed and her understanding of people has developed over time, because it does follow her for quite a few years. But this book is also just really sad because Sankofa is dealing with grief, she's dealing with loneliness, she's dealing with people misunderstanding her, and I just really felt for her because she's quite a young character. I think when we first meet her, she's only 6 years old. And I think by the end of the story, she's 13, maybe. So it's quite a few years of following her, but don't let that intimidate you because her age and like the years between don't affect the pacing of the story, in my opinion. Along with the world building, the character development is also something that's so impressive to me in a short form fiction because I feel like the character development is so well done in here, and it's how I feel about P. Djeli Clark. I'm always blown away by an author's ability to write a novella with such rich world building and character development, because I think that takes a lot of talent. I went back and I rewatched Ben's review of the book, even though I did watch it in the beginning of this. I rewatched it and I fully agree with what Ben has to say about this video. I highly encourage you to watch it as well because I think that Ben does a better job at talking about this book than I'm going to. But I agree with so much of what Ben had to say about it. Anyway, I also started Gods of Jade and Shadow. Started that this morning, and I think... Did I put a bookmark in here? I didn't put a bookmark, but I was a heathen and I dog-eared this book. So I'm on page 72 and I'm really liking this. I don't know if I said in the introduction, but I read Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia, and the one thing that always sticks out to me from that book is her ability to write a sense of place, her ability to make you feel like you are there in that time frame, because Mexican Gothic also takes place in the past. It's in the 1950s. This is in the 1920s. And just the way that Silvia Moreno Garcia has such a grasp on Mexico in those time eras is really impressive, because to me, it wasn't only the fact that like you felt that you were in that moment. You could see the city and you can see the way that people are dressed and the hairstyles, but it's also the social and political commentary in here that makes you feel like you understand what was happening in that time period in Mexico, especially for women, and the agency that women didn't really have, despite the fact that the two main characters, both in Mexican Gothic and Cassiopeia in Gods of Jade and Shadow, are both very, they're dreamers. They want more. Cassiopeia is wanting to travel and see the world. And she actually gets that opportunity in this book. She gets an opportunity because she finds herself accidentally waking a Mayan god. He happens to be the god of death. And he has to take her on this journey to find the other missing pieces of his body, like his eye, and I can't remember what the other thing was that he said. But they have to find missing pieces of his body, and she has to go with him because a bone like lodged into her finger, and so they are literally keeping each other alive at this point. That's like the accidental bargain that she made. And I'm already loving the pacing. I'm already loving the tone of this book. I'm already loving Cassiopeia. She has had a really difficult life. Her grandfather is sort of the worst, to put it nicely. She's living kind of a life of servitude because her mother ran off with a man that her grandfather didn't approve of, and eventually her husband ends up dying and she goes back to her family and has Cassiopeia. She's kind of forced to be in this life of like servitude to her own father, and so Cassiopeia also is forced to be in a life of servitude to her grandfather. But she has a cousin named Martine, and Martine is really jealous of Cassiopeia because the grandfather actually really loves Cassiopeia and wishes that she were a boy so that she could inherit his fortune and his legacy. But as it stands, Martine is going to inherit it, and he's just really jealous of Cassiopeia. Like, he really wants to prove to his grandpa that he's just as good, if not better, than Cassiopeia. So he has like a grudge against her. And I think that's going to play a part into the rest of the story. But like I said, I'm not that far into it, but hopefully I can finish it by tomorrow. Yeah, I think I can finish this by tomorrow afternoon. We got Girl Scout cookies. So I made some chai concentrate because I wanted iced chais, but I just know this isn't correct. It's too light, first off. I looked at a recipe online to see how somebody else would do it at home, and I kind of knew that it would have been wrong. So the thing is, I was a barista for like 9 years, but I've never made it from a tea bag. So there are some methods of cold brew tea that you can do that work really well, but I have a feeling it didn't work for this. It's just not dark enough, but that's okay. We're gonna make one anyway and see how it tastes. So I have ice here. I would put you guys down further to watch the actually, we're just gonna switch angles. I don't think I apologize for the bad lighting. There's just some really bad lighting. But you can already tell because this is way too light. You probably can't tell because of the lighting. It actually has good flavor. It's just really light. This is such a weird conversation we're having right now. I also shouldn't be having caffeine this late in the day, but I'm feeling a little reckless. This is probably controversial / brave, but I love the lemon ones. These are different though. So every year I've always gotten the lemonades, and these are called lemon ups. Yeah, these are called lemon ups. Controversial / brave. These are better than lemonades. If you don't like lemon cookies, you're not gonna like them anyways, but I think these are a little more tart. Oh, I forgot to mention what I did for that concentrate. I basically steeped 5 tea bags of the organic chai. There's so many other better brands out there. I'm just cheap. So I get this one. I think it tastes pretty damn good for how cheap it is. And then I made a honey simple syrup and I steeped the tea bags in room temperature water for an hour, put it in the fridge overnight. And I noticed this morning, I would have done this morning, but I noticed this morning that it was really light. So I decided to let it steep for longer. So let's go self-care though. Still wearing sweatpants. But I changed my sweater, so there's that. Unfortunately, this time around I don't have anything to share because I didn't get anything from the bookstore because they didn't have anything that I wanted. And also, for some reason, as much as I like that bookstore, it's just chaotic and I get really overwhelmed. And so I kind of give up halfway through. All that being said, actually the reason I'm here is because I finished The Gods of Jade and Shadow and I loved it. It was a 4 out of 5 stars for me. Actually was kind of surprised that it was a 4 out of 5 stars for me, only because I watched Tammie's full section where she talks about this book, and she had mentioned that there was a romance element in here, and it was actually her favorite part of the book, and it kind of made me think or wonder if maybe it was a larger part of the book than I would want it to be. But actually it didn't really bother me. I really enjoyed it, and I think Tammie was correct in saying that it's a slow burn, however slow of a burn a romance can be for a little over 300 pages. But I think the two things that threw me off were just a little bit of the pacing. I had a little bit of an issue with the pacing, and this was something that happened in Mexican Gothic as well. There were moments when I was like, okay, let's get on with this. But again, I think that was me just wanting more action out of it and not taking a step back to realize that this book was more about place, like a sense of place, and about Cassiopeia being able to fulfill that want of travel and to take in the sense of the time of the 1920s in Mexico and like what was happening at that time. And like it does really follow that whimsical fairy tale-esque style of writing. So this definitely has a completely different tone than Mexican Gothic. And then my only other issue was more about Martín and me not liking Martín as a character, because despite the parallels between Martín and Huncame's brother, I didn't really understand fully why Martín cared so much about proving to his grandfather that he was better than Cassiopeia. It just felt like male ego to me, like that he was just being really egotistical, and I was actually surprised based off of the character description of him and things that he had admitted himself of who he was, that he even stuck with trying to find Cassiopeia. But it's possible that that was the point, that he's just somebody who's not committed to anything except for being wealthy. He is very committed to that. Something about him, I just didn't like him. To be fair, I don't think you're supposed to like him, but I just really didn't like him. I did, however, really like Cassiopeia. Like I said in the beginning, I think she was a very strong, well-developed character, and I really, really enjoyed her character growth, especially going from somebody who's just kind of trying to survive and dreaming of a better life for herself, but sort of just allowing life to happen the way that it was for her because she didn't really have any other options, to going on this adventure and throughout it really realizing her worth and that she doesn't have to continue on the way that she has been, that she can live a fulfilling life. And surprisingly, I really liked the romance element in here. I think that the romance was really well done. The other thing that I really agreed with Tammie on in her review of this book was the ending. I thought the ending was really abrupt. And, you know, I think I felt the same way with Mexican Gothic. I think I felt like the ending was too abrupt. And it's not that I didn't like the ending of this book. I actually like books, and I know that a lot of people don't like this, but I really like books that have open endings. I like the idea of open endings because it's real. I think in fantasies, like fantasy series, I feel a little bit differently about it. I obviously want some sort of closure, but it wasn't necessarily the open-endedness of this bothering me. It was more that things kind of just started happening all at once, and then suddenly we were at the end. And it was a little bit jarring. Otherwise, I really, really loved this, and I highly suggest you watching Tammie's review of it as well, watching the whole vlog that she put out actually, but also watching the review of this if you've read this or are interested in reading this, because I think she hit on a lot of really great points about this book that I fully agree with, and I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars too. So similar rating. I think she gave it a 4 out of 5. Again, really excited. I finished another book on my TBR. I finished another book that was controlled by my YouTube subscription box, and I liked it a lot. We're not gonna talk about my hair. I actually did my makeup today because I was like, I need to feel human, but I'm in a lot of pain today, which I don't talk about very often, but I have a lot of like chronic pain, and today has not been great. But I did start Monday's Not Coming last night, and I'm already really liking it. I see a theme with Tiffany D. Jackson in terms of how she structures her books. And I also really like our main character. I didn't realize that our main character was only going into 8th grade. So when I first was reading it, I was a little bit, it was a little bit jarring about how young the narrator sounded. Not necessarily because I was listening to an audiobook, but genuinely the ways in which she was talking about things. And then I realized she was going into 8th grade and dealing with this really tough situation. So the main character's best friend Monday is just gone. So after the summer between 7th and 8th grade, she hasn't really heard anything from Monday when she was visiting her grandmother. And she thought it was really weird because they had talked about writing each other, and then Monday never wrote and never responded to her letters. And then she gets back and she tries to call, and Monday's number is disconnected. And then she ends up going to school the next day and Monday's not there. And so she's freaking out because she thinks that this is really unusual because they've been inseparable for most of their lives. Oh, hey, Olive. Hey. I'm only 70 pages into it, so I'm assuming that the parents, because they have a good relationship as far as I can tell, I'm sure that they'll start to catch on that it's weird, like something's weird. So I'm really liking this, but it hurts. And I feel really bad for our main character, Claudia, because she's just going through it. Like, she already doesn't like school very much because people bully her at school. And it kind of seems like she's questioning her sexuality as well. Like, she's coming to that point in her life where she's unsure about whether or not she likes boys. And then her friend is missing. And so she's going through all of these things, and it's especially devastating to see her perspective on her best friend missing. I think to her, especially the way that it's reading, to her it feels like everybody thinks that she's just losing her mind because who cares what happened on Monday? She probably just up and left, went to a different school. And Claudia's like, no, what do you guys mean? I'm less than 100 pages from finishing this book. What? Despite knowing that slight spoiler, I still have no idea where this is going. Although, like, I have an idea. Like, I have some theories, which I'm obviously not going to share because of spoilers. But I have some theories. And right now, I feel like my theories just got shattered and this is going in a completely different direction. And, like, I'm piecing some things together and I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's going to go this way. Oh my God. I guess I never thought that Tiffany Jackson was like a thriller writer. I thought she was more contemporary. And these are for sure like grown. This one, these are like psychological thrillers. And this, if I had to choose what I liked in a thriller, this is it. Okay, I need to go finish. I need to shut up and finish this. I finished this book and what the fuck? It's not that I disliked it. I actually really liked it. I don't even know how to rate it. I don't even know how to talk about it. Because I feel like anything I say could ruin your experience. And plot twist, I actually heard Mel wrong when I was watching the video because I was so desperate to get out of it. I heard what she had said wrong. So I didn't get spoiled, technically. So the whole time in my brain, I was like focusing on something else. I misheard. I don't know how to talk about this. It was a wild ride. I think that Tiffany Jackson knows what she's doing. This is her niche. It was just really sad. I definitely didn't see a lot of things coming. There is an aspect of this book that is written in a voice that feels really young.
and codependent, and it was bothering me at first. And then I started to realize that this character is in 8th grade, so she's 13, and her friend is missing. So it's like you're learning about their relationship through this 13-year-old's lens, and at the same time, her best friend's missing, and to Claudia, no one seems to care and no one seems to be looking for her, and it's very confusing. Not only is she this 13-year-old who doesn't know how to process the fact that her best friend abandoned her, she's also wondering, like, what if something happened to her? Like, why would she have run away? So, like, when I was first reading it, it was a little jarring because it does read pretty young. So it's interesting to, like, have to check yourself and be like, she's 13. You're learning about this story through a 13-year-old. She's about to turn 14 and her best friend's missing. She's not suddenly gonna be like this fucking detective. There were so many things that were executed really, really well in here. I think that this is a really tragic and sad story. It reminded me of a combination of different stories that I've read or seen movie adaptations of. Those books are actually mentioned within this book, so I thought that was really cool because that's what I had been sort of thinking about. And honestly, I think this book does a really good job of misleading you in ways, but also discussing issues. There's a few like things that are discussed in here that really affected and still affect the Black community, and it's discussed in here in such a subtle way that if you aren't really paying attention, you could miss it. On top of that, like, there's character building, and I don't see that a lot in adult psychological thrillers that I've read, and that's what I was saying in another video where I was talking about how I really do want to get into mysteries and thrillers and psychological thrillers. I didn't realize that Monday's Not Coming was like a psychological thriller type book. I don't even know if that's what you would categorize this at. I don't know. All I know is I'm gonna pick up Allegedly. This is what I know. And I went back and I watched Mel's video, which is like a spoilery section on Monday's Not Coming. And honestly, I agree so much with a lot of the things that she was talking about. So I'm glad I went back and watched it, and I loved what she had to say. So if you have read Monday's Not Coming or Grown, I would watch that video because she had a lot of great thoughts about both of the books, and I had fun watching that video. So to wrap it up, let's wrap it up. So I read Monday's Not Coming based off of Mel's thumbnail that had Grown and Monday's Not Coming in the thumbnail, and loved it. I don't know how to rate this. At this point in time, I'm sitting at 4 stars, but I'm not sure. It won't go any lower than 4 stars, if that's what you're curious about. I also read Gods of Jade and Shadow because of Tammie's thumbnail that had Gods of Jade and Shadow, and I think not The Hobbit, The Lord of the Rings in it. And I've already read The Lord of the Rings a long time ago, so I picked The Gods of Jade and Shadow, and I gave this 4 stars. And then I read Remote Control by Nnedi Okorafor based off of Ben's thumbnail where he is reviewing Remote Control, and I gave this 4 stars. And then I read The Revolution of Birdie Randolph based off of Bear's thumbnail where they are talking about their almost favorite authors, and I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. So what did I learn? I can trust my subscription box thumbnails. I mean, that doesn't really make sense because technically any of these could have been negative reviews about the books. I surprisingly had all positive reviews. I had a 50-50 chance, right, that somebody would have hated it or loved it, but in every case they loved it and I loved it. So maybe what this tells me is that I should read more books by these particular people in my subscription box, or what that tells me is that I subscribe to people that I tend to have similar tastes to, which I don't think is true because I don't read romance and I subscribe to a lot of romance readers because I think your guys' vlogs are fun. Okay, I'm gonna wrap this up because they're doing yard work and they're gonna be doing it for a while. So thank you for watching. If you've read any of these books, please let me know down below. I would love to talk about it. And I will talk to you guys next time. Bye.